Hello and welcome to Life Beyond the Numbers, the podcast for people who are curious about how to have a more fulfilling work life. We live in a world largely driven by numbers, logic and reason. But how we feel at work and about our work impacts us, our organisations and society. There is a relationship between the numbers of our organisations and the life beyond the numbers. I'm Susan Chriodain, your host. I've lived and worked in many countries. I've met people who love what they do and people who don't, people who bring their full selves to work and people who won't. But one thing that I've learned that is common to us all is that we are all unique and have unique experiences. And it's helpful to know that there are others who think like we do, or have had struggles too, or have gone where we want to go, or can show us things we didn't know. So join me and my guests as we place a lens on the human side of work life by sharing insights, stories and strategies to inspire you to let your uniqueness shine through. Hello and welcome to episode 155 of Life Beyond the Numbers. And this episode is going out on Saturday, December 23rd, 2023. 23/12/23. And we're almost at the end of 2023. And as I was reflecting on 2023, a year that for me was really quite different in many respects to any other year of my life, friendships seem to be a very standout theme for me this year. Friends are precious. Friendships are precious. And just last weekend, I travelled to Dublin to meet up with the women that I was in Deloitte with. 9 women joined Deloitte together. 9 women joined Deloitte and Touche together in the mid-90s and worked together for 3 to 3.5 years. There were guys in our intake as well, but the women formed a bond. And even though we rarely worked on audits together, we went through the trenches together, training courses, exams, difficult work encounters, the world outside of work, our work life. We shared our woes and lows and celebrated our highs. By mid-2000 or so, we had all gone our separate ways. However, we continued to meet as a group when we could, often when somebody was passing through Dublin from abroad. And over the years, those meetings have become fewer and further apart. But we keep in touch, and of course, there are some individual friendships in that group too. 7 of the women live and work in Ireland, and 2 of us still live abroad. And the last group get-together that I was part of was 7 years ago. And on that night, 8 of the 9 of us were present. I can still recall the laughter. This year there were 7 of us for lunch. We were meant to be 8, but on the morning, 1 couldn't make it. We missed you. It was such a joyful occasion. One of the women I hadn't met in 15 years. I am still flabbergasted by that. I really couldn't believe it. I guess our WhatsApp group keeps us connected and close. And this is where technology really has made a difference in our lives. As we sat around the table, shared stories, caught up with one another, laughed together, it was as if we'd been together last week. We are relaxed with one another, and before long, the slagging and teasing started.
We were relaxed with one another, and before long the slagging and teasing started as we relived old memories. And yet, at the same time, it felt like a long time. As we caught up, we could see how much had gone on in everyone's lives as we shared stories about parents, partners, kids, and more. One of the women even had 2 children since most of us met her last. And of course, we talked about lockdown and our lockdown lives. I guess you could say we talked about things that mattered most. Work barely came into it. And 7 accountants sitting around the table managed to get the bill wrong. The waitress felt that our tip was too generous and we might have made a mistake. We had. As we bid one another a fond farewell after taking some photos, we promised not to leave it so long until the next get-together. Who knows? It was such an energising afternoon, and I travelled back to Oxford by bus, plane and train, and smiled widely the whole way home, warmed by that get-together. I felt younger, I felt nostalgic, I felt the preciousness of life and the genuine appreciation of true friends. I had travelled to Dublin on Friday and stayed with another friend that night. We met in Pakistan in 2005 when we both worked for an international humanitarian organisation called Goal, and we were there responding to the aftermath of the earthquake. Although we only spent a brief time together then, our friendship has grown in strength over the years. And we spent the most wonderful evening together and talked openly and honestly about our lives as we reminisced and shared future plans. As I thought about this wonderful weekend and these fabulous friends, I reflected further on this year and saw how friends and friendships really stood out this year. I really hadn't realised how much of a theme there had been throughout the year. One of my friends sent me a gift for my 50th, a little plaque to hang somewhere in the house. And on it is written, "Friends are like stars. You can't always see them, but they are always there." And of course, I'm reminded of the people that I grew up with, went to school with, and university. I have one friend I've known since we started school in the late 70s. Amazing to still be friends today. Most of my friends from my hometown are turning 50 in 2023 or 2024, and more so than any other year, it has sparked me to reach out and rekindle some friendships, some people that I hadn't even spoken to in my 40s. And yet that doesn't seem to matter because friendships stand that test of time. And although we may not remember when we last met, we remember how we feel about one another, why we are friends in the first place, and we can just as easily pick up where we left off. This September, I was lucky enough to spend quite a few days in Corfu with friends I've known since school. We get together when we can. And since about 2002, we've been going away for a long weekend every year or so. Our last one was actually in January 2020. We were so lucky to have that weekend together before we were locked down. That one was in Ireland, in Galway, where we went to uni. It was a massive trip down memory lane, revisiting old haunts. This September, I had just submitted the first draft of my book, I had just submitted the first draft of my book, Leading Beyond the Numbers. I was exhausted arriving in Corfu, and the last thing I really wanted to do was talk about the book. And on that first night, one of my friends said, "Tell us about the book." And my reply was, "I actually just don't want to talk about it. I can't." And my friends accepted that, and we got on with our holiday. Nobody brought it up again, unless I did. Like, how amazing is that? We shared a lovely few days together with plenty of laughter, nostalgia, and catching up on our lives. As I put this episode together, I wondered if David Whyte had an essay on friendship in his book Consolations. Of course he does. And one of the lines that stood out for me was, he says, "The dynamic of friendship is almost always underestimated as a constant force in human life." And in January this year, that force brought me so much strength and solace. When my mom and my aunt had their accident, my friendships were my lifeline, at home and away. My friends offered temporary relief, a listening ear, support and wisdom. If the greatest gift you can give another is being there, I was the privileged recipient of many gifts. On a daily basis, I left voicemails. I remember leaving voicemails in the days after the accident, explaining what was happening. And when I returned to the UK, each day I had someone to speak with, someone to share with. Those calls meant everything. In an uncertain time, those friendships were certainty. And thank you to every single one of my friends who was there. It meant everything. And of course, as I thought about this episode, I thought about the sitcom Friends, which was a staple of life in the 90s, probably into the noughties as well. And earlier this year, it was a shock when Matthew Perry, who played Chandler, passed away. Those friends lived in one another's pockets, but I think we could all see ourselves in those relationships. And the theme song says, "I'll be there for you when the rain starts to pour. I'll be there for you like I've been there before. I'll be there for you because you're there for me too." And that's so true. That's what friends do. They say that friends are family you choose for yourself. And friendship to me is being able to pick up where you left off as if no time had passed, and yet many years may have. Friends remind us of so many different chapters of our lives. They often see in us ways we might not see ourselves and encourage that part of us. They understand us, forgive us, give us space, a shoulder to cry on, and someone to rely on. Laughter is ever present, and the occasional tear. We might miss out on the day-to-day, but we rarely miss one another, as there is a sense of knowing that they are always there, and a sense of joy that one day soon we'll meet again. And even after they depart this world, they can be a source of comfort and strength. I know that firsthand. My life is richer because of my friendships, and I am truly grateful for those in my past, in my present, and for the future. People come into your life for a reason, a season, or life. And a number of my friends have been friends since school. Since then, most of my friends I've met through work. At work, friendships really matter. And as we reflected at the weekend on our time at Deloitte, we all agreed that it was the people who made those years. We had one another to rely on, and when times were tough, we had safety in numbers and support as we were all in it together. People matter most. Our lives, beyond the number of years we've known each other, are the number of times we see each other. But still, that reminds me of the Cheers song, that reminds me of the Cheers theme. Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name and they're always glad you came. You want to be where you can see our troubles are all the same. You want to be where everybody knows your name. David Whyte says in his essay on friendship that a diminishing circle of friends is the first terrible diagnostic of a life in deep trouble, of overwork, of too much emphasis on a professional identity, of forgetting who will be there when our armoured personalities run into the inevitable natural disasters and vulnerabilities found in even the most average existence. And he closes his essay by saying that the ultimate touchstone of friendship is witness, the privilege of having been seen by someone, and the equal privilege of being granted the sight of the essence of another. To have walked with them and to have believed in them, and sometimes just to have accompanied them, and sometimes just to have accompanied them for however brief a span, on a journey impossible to accomplish alone. This is the time of year to rekindle friendships that may have faded into the background. It's the perfect excuse to get back in touch with people. Send somebody a message, call them, visit them, let someone know you are thinking of them. I want to leave you with a saying that we have in Ireland. One I'm often remembered one I often recall when I meet with friends I haven't seen for a while. Go merimid bio ag an taimse a ríist, which translates into English as, may we all be alive at this time again. There are a number of friends I haven't seen for a couple of years, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you in 2024. And to all of my listeners, I want to wish you and yours a wonderful festive season, full with friendships, and all the best for 2024. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the paths we traversed on today's episode. If something rang through for you, be sure to let me know. Or maybe you can share this with someone in your life who would benefit from listening too. And if you enjoy helping others, I'd be so grateful if you would leave a review, so that people who might also be curious about their own life beyond the numbers can discover this podcast too.